The massive ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Commander HFY stood at the observation window and looked down at the blue planet below. She was 3 meters tall, with scales that glowed softly in the light. Her eyes were large and bright, filled with ancient intelligence. She had traveled across the galaxy many times, but Earth was different. Earth was the home of humans, a species that most Lyrians thought was simple and weak. HFY's 2 cubs, Tayo and Jimin, pressed their smaller bodies against the glass next to her. Tayo was the bigger one, with darker scales and a confident way of moving. Jimin was smaller and more careful, watching everything with curious eyes. Both cubs had never been to Earth before. They had only heard stories from their mother about the strange creatures that lived here. "Is that really where the small ones live?" Tayo asked, his voice making a low, rumbling sound. "Yes," HFY answered. "The humans live down there. We have come to understand them better, to learn about their culture and their ways." The ship landed softly on a flat area outside a large human building. Scientists and soldiers from Lyria stood ready, but HFY had made it clear that this was a peaceful mission. There would be no fighting. The goal was to talk and to learn. A group of humans walked toward the ship. They looked very small from where HFY stood, but she had learned long ago not to judge any creature by size alone. The humans wore formal clothes and smiled with their small mouths. A man with dark hair and kind eyes stepped forward. His name was Dr. Quan Minseo, and he had studied the Lyrian language for many years. "Welcome to Earth, Commander HFY," he said, speaking in the Lyrian tongue. His accent was not perfect, but it was clear that he had worked hard to learn. "We are honored that you have come to visit us." HFY made a low sound that meant respect. "The honor is ours, Dr. Quan. We hope to build friendship between our peoples." The humans led HFY and her cubs to a large room that had been prepared for them. There were couches and chairs made to fit Lyrian bodies. The humans had worked hard to make this space comfortable. A young woman with red cheeks stood in the corner looking nervous. This was Han Nari, one of Earth's most famous chefs. She had prepared a special meal to welcome their alien guests. "We have brought you the finest foods from Earth," Dr. Quan explained, as servants placed many dishes on a long table. "These are treats from different countries and different cultures. We would like you to try them all." HFY looked at the food with curiosity. She was used to eating raw protein and mineral supplements. The foods here looked strange. Some were bright colors, some smelled sweet, which was unusual for food. Some smelled strong in ways that made her nose feel uncomfortable. Tayo and Jimin stood behind their mother, watching carefully. In Lyrian culture, the mother eats first, and the young ones only eat what is left. This was the law of nature and the law of their people. HFY picked up a piece of roasted squid. It was brown and looked like it had been treated with fire. She put it in her mouth and bit down. Her large teeth worked the meat. Her eyes grew wider. The flavor was surprising. It was not raw, but it had a taste that was almost like a memory, almost like something she had tasted long ago. "This is good," she said finally. "What is it?" "It is squid, a creature from the ocean," Han Nari answered, her voice shaking a little. "We cook it with salt and oil. The heat changes the flavor and makes it easier to eat." HFY tried more foods. Some she liked, some she did not like. But the squid stayed in her mind. There was something special about it. Something about how the heat had changed the taste. Something about how many different flavors lived in one small piece of meat. Then Han Nari brought out a tray. On this tray were many small golden pieces. They were shaped like chips, and they shone in the light like tiny jewels. "These are called honey butter crisps," Han Nari said. "They are made from snacks, with honey and butter and salt. They are very popular in Korea, which is my home country." HFY picked one up. It was light, almost like holding air. She brought it to her mouth and bit down. Everything changed. The crisp broke apart on her teeth. Flavors exploded on her tongue all at once. Sweet honey, salty salt, butter that was rich and smooth. But there was more. There were other tastes, too. Sesame, gochujang, which was a spicy red paste that made her mouth feel warm and alive. It was not painful. It was like a dance on her tongue. Every part of the flavor worked together. Nothing was too much. Nothing was not enough. It was perfect balance. Heywan closed her eyes. Her scales started to shimmer with a soft light. This was something her people did when they felt strong emotion or great joy. It was not something she could control. Behind her, Tayo and Jimin noticed immediately. Their mother had made the shimmer light. That only happened when something was very, very important. "This," Haiwan said, opening her eyes and looking at Han-Na-Ri. "This is extraordinary. What is this magic?" Han-Na-Ri laughed, a sound like small bells. "It is not magic. It is just food. But I am glad you enjoy it." "Enjoy," Haiwan repeated. "That is the word. I enjoy this very much." She reached for another piece, then another. She ate the entire tray, one piece at a time, making each one last. Her cubs watched with hungry eyes. They could smell the honey and the butter. They could see how much their mother loved the crisp golden pieces. When the tray was empty, Haiwan looked at Han-Na-Ri. "Can you make this again?" she asked. "Of course," the chef answered. "I can make it whenever you want." "Tomorrow," Heywan said. "I want to taste it again tomorrow." That night, as the cubs tried to sleep, they whispered to each other about the golden crisps. Neither of them had tasted even one piece. They had only watched their mother eat them. But from the smell alone, from watching her shimmer light dance across her scales, they knew that these crisps were special. They did not know that everything would change because of a simple snack. They did not know that this moment would teach them lessons about sharing and about being human, even though they were not human at all. They only knew that tomorrow they would see if their mother would share, or if the golden crisps would belong only to her. The morning sun came through the window of the guest quarters, and Heywan woke before her cubs. Her first thought was about the golden crisps. The taste still lived in her mouth, even after sleeping for many hours. She had not felt this curious about food in many years. Her people did not usually have such strong feelings about eating. Eating was necessary. Eating was fuel for the body. But this was different. This was something she wanted, something she desired for reasons that went beyond simple hunger. Heywan moved quietly through the room so she would not wake Tai-O and Jimin. She went to the window and looked out at the Earth landscape. Everything was so green here, so full of water, so different from the dry red planet where most Lyrians lived. A message came through her communication device. It was Dr. Kwan. He wanted to have breakfast with her and talk about the cultural exchange. He also mentioned that Han-Na-Ri had prepared something special for her. Something special. Haiwan's scales shimmered slightly. She knew what he meant. When she arrived at the eating hall, the table was already full of food. But in the center, on a special plate, were the honey butter crisps. A fresh batch, still warm from cooking. The smell filled the entire room. Heywan sat down, trying not to show how much she wanted those crisps. It was important to maintain dignity, even when facing something you wanted so badly. "I have asked Han-Na-Ri to make these every day during your visit," Dr. Kwan said, smiling. "She has also been working on new recipes with the same flavors. She wants to show you many different versions." This information made Haiwan's heart beat faster. Every day, new versions. She looked at the crisps again and began to eat them slowly. She wanted to make them last as long as possible. Dr. Kwan watched her with interest. "On Earth, we have a tradition called cooking classes. Scientists from my team watch as chefs make food, and they learn the process. Would you like to see how Han Nari makes these crisps? Would you like to understand the cooking process? Heywan stopped eating for a moment. You would show me how to make them? Of course. Knowledge is something that all civilizations should share. Heywan agreed to visit the kitchen the next day. This gave her something wonderful to think about. She finished the crisps on her plate and looked for more, but there were no more. She had eaten the entire batch. Back in the quarters, Teo and Jimin could smell the crisps on their mother's breath. They could smell it in the air. They knew she had eaten them without them. Can we have some? Jimin asked, her voice small and hopeful. Heywan looked at her cubs. According to Lyrian law, they had to wait. They had to be obedient. But she could see the hunger in their eyes. She could see how much they wanted to know what the crisps tasted like. Tomorrow, she said, when I go to the kitchen to learn about cooking, you can come with me. You may see how they are made, but you cannot eat them. You can only watch and learn. The cubs were not happy about this answer, but they knew their mother would not change her mind. That night, they talked about what they thought the crisps might taste like. Teo said they would probably taste like power and strength. Jimin said they would taste like joy. They argued about who would be the first to taste one when their mother finally allowed it. The next morning, the three Lyrians went to the kitchen. Han Nari showed Heywan every step of the process. She showed how the simple crackers were baked. She showed how the honey and butter were mixed together. She showed how the spices were added one by one, each one important for the final taste. The most important thing, Han Nari said, is balance. Too much of one thing, and the taste becomes bad. Not enough, and you cannot taste it at all. Every ingredient must work together with the others. Heywan listened carefully. She watched the small woman's hands move with skill and precision. Han Nari was not strong like a Lyrian. She could never fight a Lyrian in combat. But watching her work, Heywan understood that strength was not just about muscles and power. Strength was also about knowledge, about skill, about understanding how things work together. The cubs watched the process too, their eyes growing bigger with each step. When the final crisps came out of the oven, steam rose from them. The smell was so strong that both cubs made sounds of wanting, but Heywan did not give them any. Instead, she tasted them herself. She chewed slowly, thinking about each flavor, understanding now how each ingredient had been chosen and added. The crisps tasted even better now that she knew what went into them. Can I ask you something? Han Nari said, still speaking in Lyrian. Heywan looked at the young woman. Yes. Why do you want to learn about our food? Your people are hunters. You are strong and powerful. I do not understand why food interests you so much. Heywan was quiet for a moment. She had been asking herself the same question. On Lyria, we are taught that humans are simple creatures. We think that you do not have much to offer us. But watching you work, I see something different. I see intelligence. I see creativity. I see understanding. You have taken simple ingredients and made something beautiful. This is a kind of power that my people do not often see. Han Nari smiled. Thank you. I will make you a new batch every day. I will try new recipes. I will show you how humans create beauty from simple things. Over the next several days, this became a routine. Every morning, Heywan would go to the kitchen. Sometimes she brought her cubs. Sometimes she came alone. She watched Han Nari work. She learned about the different ingredients. She tasted the new recipes. Teo and Jimin became obsessed. They would follow their mother everywhere, hoping that maybe today, finally, they would be allowed to taste one crisp. Every time she came back from the kitchen, they would press close to her, trying to smell what she had eaten. The other Lyrians noticed this change in their commander. Usually, Heywan was serious and formal, but now she seemed different. She smiled more. Her interest in food had become famous among the crew. Some of them thought it was strange. Some of them thought it was wonderful. And through it all, Teo and Ji-min waited, growing more desperate each day, wondering when their mother would finally let them taste the golden treasure they could only smell. 2 weeks into the visit, Han Nari had become famous throughout the research facility. Everyone knew about the alien commander who loved honey butter crisps. Everyone talked about the recipes that Han Nari was creating every day. Some of the human scientists thought it was funny, but most of them understood that this was something important. A dangerous species was learning to appreciate human culture. A predator was becoming interested in something that humans had created. The kitchen had become the most important place on the entire compound. Han Nari spent most of her days there, working on new versions of the crisps. She added roasted seaweed. She added sesame seeds. She changed the amount of honey. She changed the spice levels. Every batch was different. Every batch was a new adventure. Haewon visited the kitchen every single day. The other Lyrians did not understand her obsession. They thought she should be more focused on the official business of the cultural exchange. But Haewon did not care what they thought. She had found something that made her feel alive in a way that nothing else did. "Today," Han Nari announced one afternoon, "I have created something special. I have been working on this recipe for 5 days. Every day I change something. Today, I think it is perfect." Haewon watched as the golden crisps came out of the oven. They looked different from the others. They were a deeper gold color. The sesame seeds on top were darker. The smell that came from them was more complex, with layers and depths that Haewon had not smelled before. Han Nari put them on a special plate. "This batch is only for you," she said. "I want you to be the first to taste it. I want your opinion before I show it to anyone else." Haewon picked up one crisp carefully. It was warm. It was perfect. She put it in her mouth. Her eyes closed. Her scales started to shimmer with light. The colors moved across her skin like a living thing. Red, gold, and blue lights danced together. For a moment, she could not breathe because the taste was so overwhelming. This was better than all the others. This was the best thing she had ever put in her mouth. The honey was perfect. The salt was perfect. The sesame was perfect. The gochujang added a heat that made her mouth feel alive. The roasted seaweed added a flavor that was almost like the ocean. Everything worked together in perfect harmony. When she opened her eyes, tears were falling down her face. This was something that Lyrians did when they felt very strong emotions. Haewon had not cried since she was a very young cub. "This is the best thing you have made," she said. "This is perfect. Please, I need you to make this every day. Only this recipe. This is the one." Han Nari laughed with joy. "I will make it every day for you." That evening, as the sun was setting, Haewon went to a quiet garden near the facility. This was her place to think. This was where she came when she wanted to be alone. She sat on a large stone bench and looked out at the green trees and the blue sky. The final batch of the day's crisps was in a container next to her. This was the special batch that Han Nari had made just for her. There were only 5 crisps left. Only 5. She wanted to make them last as long as possible. She picked up one crisp and was about to eat it when she heard movement behind her. Teo and Ji-min came running through the garden as fast as they could move. They had followed her. They had waited all day for their chance. Their eyes were locked onto the container with the crisps. Both cubs stopped a few meters away from their mother. They knew they could not just take the food. That would be disrespectful. But they could not hide their want. Their bodies shook with the desire to taste what their mother had been eating for so long. "Mother," Teo said, his voice shaking, "please, we have waited so long. Please let us taste just one." "I have smelled them every day," Ji-min added, "and every day I wonder what they taste like. Please, Mother, just one small piece." Haewon looked at her cubs. They were hungry. Not just for the crisps, but for the experience of tasting something that their mother loved so much. She understood this hunger. She had felt it herself when she first tasted the crisps. But Lyrian law was clear. The matriarch's food was the matriarch's food. The young ones had to wait their turn. If she gave in to their requests, she would be breaking the rules that had kept their society strong for thousands of years. HFY picked up one of the 5 remaining crisps. She held it up so the cubs could see it clearly. She slowly brought it to her mouth. She chewed it slowly, making sure they could hear the sound of the crisp breaking apart. The look on her cubs' faces was almost painful to see, but she did not stop. When she had swallowed, she reached for a second crisp. "Mother, no!" Teo cried out. "This is not fair! You are being mean!" Jimin added, tears in her eyes. But HFY continued. She ate 3 more crisps, one after one, until only one was left. She held the final crisp in her large claws. Her cubs stared at it like it was the most important thing in the universe. "This," HFY said, "is the last one. Who should get it?" Both cubs stepped forward at the same time. They were no longer thinking about Lyrian law. They were only thinking about that one last crisp. "I am faster," Teo said. "But I am smarter," Jimin argued. HFY raised her hand. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She stood up and walked toward the edge of the garden, where there was a long path lined with trees. She held the crisp over her head high above the cub's reach. "If you want this crisp," she said, "you will have to catch me." And then she started to run. HFY ran through the garden with the crisp held high above her head. The golden snack gleamed in the light of the setting sun. Behind her, Teo and Jimin chased her with all the speed their young bodies could produce. They were fast, but HFY was faster. She was also much smarter about how she moved. She knew the garden. She knew which paths would slow the cubs down. For 5 minutes they ran. The cubs grew tired, but they did not stop. The hunger for that last crisp pushed them forward. They did not care that they were breaking Lyrian rules. They did not care that they were showing disrespect to their mother. They only cared about getting that small golden piece of food. Finally, HFY came to a stop near a large stone wall. She was hardly out of breath. Her cubs collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. Their eyes never left the crisp in her hand. HFY looked at her cubs. She saw their determination. She saw their willingness to challenge her, to break the old rules, to do something dangerous just for a chance to taste what she had been eating. She saw intelligence in their eyes. She saw the same creativity and problem-solving skills that Han-Nari had shown her in the kitchen. In that moment, HFY understood something important. Her cubs were learning. They were learning not just from watching her, but from watching the humans, too. They were learning that there could be other ways to do things, other ways besides following the old rules from the old time. "Both of you," HFY said slowly, "are very brave. You have challenged me. You have shown that you want something badly enough to break the law. This shows strength." Teo's eyes grew wide. Was their mother going to give them the crisp? "But," HFY continued, "true strength is not just about winning and taking what you want. True strength is also about understanding and compromise." She looked at the crisp in her hand. It was still perfect, still golden, still beautiful. She could eat it herself. She had earned it. She was the matriarch. But watching her cubs, she remembered something that Dr. Kwan had taught her. He had told her about human values. He had told her that humans understood something called fairness, the idea that resources could be shared, the idea that a leader could be strong by giving, not just by taking. HFY broke the crisp into 2 pieces, not equal pieces. She took the slightly smaller piece for herself, and she gave the slightly larger piece to Teo and Jimin to share. The cubs did not move. They could not believe what they were seeing. "Take it," HFY said. You have earned it through your bravery and determination." Teo reached for the larger piece with a shaking claw. Jimin grabbed the other end. For a moment, they seemed like they would fight over it. But then, something unexpected happened. They both stopped. They looked at the piece of crisp. Then they looked at each other. "We can share it," Jimin said quietly. Teo nodded. "Yes, we can share." They broke the crisp into 2 smaller pieces, and each cub ate their half. Their eyes closed as the flavor hit their tongues. The taste was everything they had imagined and more. It was sweet and salty and spicy all at once. It was the most amazing thing they had ever experienced. When they opened their eyes, their scales began to shimmer with the same light that their mother's scales had shone. For the first time, all 3 of them glowed with the same emotion at the same time. Dr. Kwan, who had been watching from a distance with his team of scientists, saw this moment. He saw the 3 Lyrians glowing in the darkness. He saw them sharing something precious. He saw them learning something that humans had learned long ago. "What do you think is happening?" a young scientist asked him. Dr. Kwan smiled. "I think we are watching a moment when an entire species learns something new about itself." That night, Dr. Kwan came to visit Haiwan privately. He found her in the garden, sitting alone with her cubs sleeping on either side of her. "That was a beautiful thing I saw today," Dr. Kwan said in his careful Lyrian accent. Haiwan looked up. "I am not sure what you mean. I broke the laws of my people. I shared my food. I allowed my cubs to have something that should only be given to them when they are older." "Yes," Dr. Kwan said, sitting down carefully on a bench. "And why did you do that?" Haiwan was quiet for a long time. "Because I watched your chef make food with patience and care. Because I watched you teach me that different people can understand each other. Because I saw that my cubs were learning not just from me, but from watching humans. They are learning that there are other ways to live, other ways to be strong." Dr. Kwan nodded. "Humans call this culture. It is how we teach each other what is important. It is how we change and grow." "I want to understand more about this," Haiwan said. "I want my cubs to learn more. I want my people to know that humans are not simple creatures. We are wrong about this. You are complex and wise in ways that we have not understood." Dr. Kwan felt tears come to his eyes. This was why he had studied the Lyrian language for so many years. This was why he had invited the alien commander to Earth. Not to show off human strength or power, but to show human wisdom. "Then we will teach you," Dr. Kwan said. "We will teach you everything we can. And I hope you will teach us about your people as well." From that night on, everything changed. Haiwan did not just visit the kitchen anymore. She spent time with Han-Nari learning to cook herself. She learned about the history of Korean food. She learned about how humans took simple ingredients and made them into something meaningful. And every day, as the sun set, she would share her last crisp with Teo and Jimin. Sometimes she broke it into 3 pieces. Sometimes she broke it into 2. But every time she watched her cubs learn about sharing and about compromise, and about being something more than just powerful hunters. The day of departure came faster than anyone expected. 2 months had passed since Haiwan and her cubs first arrived on Earth. 2 months of learning, tasting, and changing. The small honey butter crisp had become so much more than just a snack. It had become a bridge between 2 worlds. Han-Nari had written down all of her recipes. She had created a special book with pictures and instructions in both the human language and in Lyrian. She had made enough crisps for the journey home, carefully packed in special containers that would keep them fresh during the long travel through space. But before the ship left, there was one final ceremony. Dr. Kwan had organized something special. All the scientists, all the workers, and all the Lyrians were gathering in a large hall. Han-Nari stood in the center with a giant tray of golden crisps. Hei-Wan walked into the hall with her cubs. Tayo and Ji-Min looked different now. They were not just the curious young aliens anymore. They had learned so much. They had tasted human food. They had watched humans create things with patience and skill. They understood now that intelligence was not just about strength and power. Dr. Kwan stepped forward with a document in his hands. "Commander Hei-Wan," he said in Lyrian, "I have been asked by the leaders of Earth to ask you something important. We would like to extend our cultural exchange program. We would like to send human researchers, human teachers, and yes, even human chefs to your planet. We would like your people to learn from us, and we would like to learn from you." The entire hall went silent. This was a huge decision. No alien species had ever allowed humans to live on their world before. Hei-Wan looked at Dr. Kwan. She thought about everything that had happened. She thought about Han-Nari's patience and skill. She thought about how her cubs had learned about sharing and cooperation. She thought about how a simple snack had opened her mind to a new way of thinking. "Yes," Hei-Wan said. "Yes, we will accept this offer. Your people have taught us more in 2 months than we have learned from any other species in many years. You have shown us that strength is not the only thing that matters. Creativity matters. Patience matters. Sharing matters." The humans in the hall began to cheer. The Lyrians, who did not usually make noise, started to make sounds of approval. It was a moment that would be remembered in the history of both species. Then Han-Nari came forward with the giant tray of crisps. "These are for the journey home," she said to Hei-Wan. "I have made enough for your entire crew, and I have written down every recipe so that you can make them yourselves." Hei-Wan reached out and took the hand of the small human woman. By Lyrian standards, this was a very formal and important gesture. It meant respect and friendship. "Thank you," Hei-Wan said, "for showing me that size does not matter. Intelligence, creativity, and kindness are what truly make a species great." That night, as the Lyrian ship prepared for launch, Hei-Wan stood with her cubs in the observation room. They could see Earth getting smaller below them. They could see the lights of the cities. They could see the blue oceans. It was beautiful, and it was sad to leave. "Mother?" Ji-Min asked. "Will we come back?" "Yes," Hei-Wan answered. "We will definitely come back, and next time we will understand better. We will be ready to learn even more." Tayo held something in his small claws. It was a crisp that Han-Nari had given him as they left. He was saving it, not eating it right away. He wanted to make it last. "Why do you not eat it now?" Ji-Min asked. "Because," Tayo said, "if I eat it now, it will be gone. But if I wait, I can remember this moment every time I think about it. I can remember Earth and Han-Nari and Dr. Kwan and the taste of something that is not just food, but something that means friendship." Hei-Wan looked at her young cub with surprise and pride. He had learned something even more important than the lesson about sharing. He had learned about memory. He had learned that some things were valuable not because you could have them forever, but because you could remember them forever. As the ship jumped into space and Earth disappeared from view, Hei-Wan held her cubs close. She thought about the golden crisps. She thought about Han-Nari's kind smile. She thought about Dr. Kwan's patient teaching. She thought about how two species, so different in every way, had found common ground in something as simple as a snack. Back on Earth, Dr. Kwan watched the Lyrian ship disappear into the dark sky. Han-Nari stood next to him, tears falling from her eyes. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. "Yes," Dr. Kwan said. "We did more than that. We changed the future. We showed that humans are not weak or simple. We showed that we have wisdom. We showed that we can teach even the strongest creatures something valuable." He looked down at the last crisp on the tray. Han-Nari, what you have done with your food, it is more important than weapons or technology. It is the foundation of peace. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy began to hear about what happened on Earth. The news spread from planet to planet. The Lyrians had found something on Earth that they valued more than resources or power. They had found culture. They had found friendship. And it all began because a commander decided to try a new snack. Months later, the first human researchers arrived on Lyria. They were welcomed with respect and care. They were given places to live and work. And every single day, Haiwan and her cubs shared crisp snacks with them, not just eating them, but talking about them, enjoying them together, understanding that food was more than fuel. Food was connection. Food was love. Food was the beginning of understanding. The honey butter crisp had become a symbol throughout the galaxy. It represented the moment when the Lyrians learned that humans were not simple creatures. It represented the moment when two species discovered that they could learn from each other. It represented peace and friendship and the possibility of a better future. And every time someone bit into a golden crisp and tasted the perfect balance of sweet and salty and spicy, they remembered the story. They remembered Haiwan and her cubs. They remembered Han-Nari and her skill. They remembered that sometimes the most important discoveries come from the most unexpected places. The story of the alien commander and the honey butter crisp would be told for generations. It would be a reminder that civilization is not built on power or conquest, but on understanding and sharing and opening your mind to new possibilities. And somewhere on Lyria, in a kitchen that had been built based on Han-Nari's designs, new chefs were learning to make the perfect honey butter crisp. They were learning patience and skill. They were learning that food could be art. And they were learning that the universe was full of amazing things if only you were brave enough to try them.